Mountain Botanicals, and today we're going to make CBD Cocoa, which is actually one of my favorite treats and fairly easy to make. And one reason that people like to use CBD in cooking is because they prefer to take the CBD with a little bit of food, partly because maybe they don't like the taste of it. Some people don't mind the taste, but other people prefer to have it with some food so they don't have the pronounced CBD flavor. And then also, when you have CBD with food and your digestive system is working, it can help the body process the CBD faster and you get a quicker onset of the effects. So we're going to make hot chocolate. And today in Maine, actually, it is cold. In fact, it got down to negative 17 degrees last night, which is as cold as it's ever been since I've been here. It's been over 20 years. So it's good. It's a good day for hot chocolate. I know this is pretty basic. Most of you probably have made hot chocolate before, but over the years, I've come up with a couple little tricks and things that I like to do that make it just a little bit better and also a little easier to make sometimes. I like to make the actual chocolate part of it ahead of time and put it in a mason jar or some kind of a container, keep it in the refrigerator. That way, when you're ready to make hot chocolate, you don't have to mix up all the ingredients and go through all that trouble. You just grab the chocolate syrup and you add it to the milk and you're good to go. But we're gonna, for demonstration purposes, we're gonna actually go through the process here. So what I've done is I've measured out a quarter cup of cocoa and a quarter cup of sugar. We use organic cocoa and organic sugar, but that's certainly not essential. But we like to support organic agriculture because that's what we do here at Bald Mountain Botanicals. So you can also use honey if you prefer for sweetener, and you could also use maple syrup, which gives it a kind of a nice New Englandy flavor. So what we've got here is our mixture of cocoa powder and sugar, and we're going to take a little bit of salt. And you may think that putting salt in cocoa is kind of weird. I know I did at first, but a tiny little bit of salt actually helps accentuate the flavor of the chocolate. This is something that I learned through the years, and it doesn't need to be much. We're going to make 1 quart of cocoa in this. So we've got a half cup each of cocoa and sugar, and we're going to put in just about 1/8 of a teaspoon of salt. So we're going to mix that all up there, and then you've got some hot water here, and we're going to make our syrup. And you don't want to use a lot of water because if you use too much, it'll dilute the cocoa. So, you know, maybe a quarter cup or less of water, just enough to moisten those ingredients. And then we're going to mix that up. Make sure that water is good and hot. If you use cold water, it doesn't blend the ingredients as well. You end up with a kind of a lumpy mess. And nobody likes lumps in their cocoa. So here we've got our chocolate syrup. It's nice and thick. As you can see, it's probably about the consistency of whipping cream. And we're going to add 1 teaspoon of vanilla extract. Don't use imitation vanilla. Always use the real thing. So it's just vanilla extract and a little bit of alcohol. Put a full, oops, I forgot to shake it. You should always shake vanilla extract because the ingredients, the solids, sometimes will collect on the bottom. So do that a little bit of a shake. And we're going to add our teaspoon of vanilla extract to syrup. Blend that up nice and well. And we're good to go there. So now into our saucepan, we've got our quart of milk. Again, we like to use organic milk. And here in Maine, actually, you can get not just organic milk, but you can get raw milk from a local dairy. And your state may not permit that. It's kind of a state-by-state thing, but we feel that the raw milk is actually healthier and tastes better, to be frank. Obviously, it has to be carefully processed, and you can't have raw milk laying around in a warm room or something, so you need to take care of it. But if it's kept cold and if it's processed and kept clean, it's terrific. So here's our quart of raw milk. And then we just dump in our syrup and blend it up real well. Just to get every last little bit out of that measuring cup, I'm going to add a little bit of the milk back in there and stir it like so. Now when you heat the cocoa, you want to, a couple little things to keep in mind. First of all, don't use a really high heat. You can burn the bottom of it, and that'll impart kind of a nasty flavor to the cocoa. Also, don't put a lid on it because it has a way of foaming up. Milk will foam up and boil over. And I've had a couple accidents over the years, including an epic disaster on the wood stove where the cocoa boiled over onto the wood stove and filled up the house with a horrible stench. It was not a good scene. So you want to keep the lid off and keep a close eye on it. Give it a good stir. We're going to go ahead and put this onto our wood stove to warm it up. And once it's nice and hot, we're going to complete the treat with a couple things. First, we're going to add a little bit of CBD oil. And I'll talk to you in a minute about how to calculate how much to add. And for the ultimate treat, we're going to make up some fresh whipped cream and put that on top of the cocoa. And that is about as heavenly a late winter afternoon cold day snack as you could ever hope to have. All right, so we're going to put this on the stove, and then once it's hot, I'll be right back and we will complete the cocoa. Okay, so the cocoa is on the wood stove right now. It's warming up. I just stirred it, and we're gonna, as we're waiting, we're gonna make the whipped cream. So let me just point out a couple of quick tricks as far as whipping cream. First of all, it really helps if the bowl that you use and the beaters are cold. I actually just put these out on the back porch because it's about, I think it's right now about 0. It's warmed up a little bit. So this is ice cold, and that will actually help the whipping cream solidify faster, which is convenient. It's always best to whip cream by hand. It's easy to over whip cream, and sort of the consistency, I mean, this is a matter of taste, but the consistency that's ideal is where it's still smooth and a little bit, I wouldn't say liquidy, but not stiff like chocolate mousse kind of cream. You want something that's a little bit more soft that you can sort of stir into the cocoa and have it be in a slightly liquid form. The cocoa will melt the cream and make it a little less stiff that way, but I like to whip the cream by hand just because you have more control over the consistency. So unfortunately, I did not have access to our local dairy cream. That's my first choice, but I have some from the store here. This is organic whipping cream, and we're just going to put, because we're making a quart of cocoa and we don't want to be too decadent here, I think maybe we'll do about half a pint. Remember that cream, when you whip it, it actually expands considerably in volume, and you end up with about double or more even of the amount of volume as the original. So always kind of start a little bit less than what you think you're going to need, and then you'll, as you whip it, it'll increase. So I don't add any sweetener yet. I like to get it started and get it almost to the point where it's ready, and then kind of at the last little bit I add in the sweetener. And for the sweetener, we're going to use honey for that. You can use powdered sugar. I don't recommend granulated sugar because then you get a kind of gritty consistency to the cream because the sugar won't dissolve in the cold cream. But honey is ideal. You can also use a little bit of maple syrup. And we're just going to whip this up and get it to just prior to the final consistency. We're going to stir in a little bit of honey. And also, another secret ingredient for whipped cream is a tiny little bit of vanilla extract, just like what we put in the cocoa. And that, it's a matter of personal taste. It's optional, but it does add a little bit of nice flavor to your cream. So let's go ahead and get this whipped up. Okay, now for the finishing touch here. So what we're going to do is sweeten up this cream and add a tiny little bit of vanilla extract for flavor. So we're going to take about a teaspoon of maple syrup, which is one way to sweeten it. You could also use honey, or powdered sugar works too. But we're going to take a teaspoon of maple syrup, give it kind of a New Englandy flair. And then as far as vanilla extract, oops, always shake that before you use it. Give it a little shake, and let's put in not much. The cream is quite neutral, so you don't want to overpower it. So we're going to put in about 1/8 of a teaspoon at the most, and we're going to stir that up. And our cream is soft. It's not, so that it doesn't stand up in peaks, but it's a little bit runny. That makes the best consistency for the cocoa. So take a little bit of this cocoa and put it in the mug. Don't fill it up all the way. You want to put in maybe at the most 2/3 or 3/4 cup. Leave room for that cream. And now we're going to add the CBD oil. Now, the dosing is something that is very individual specific. The golden rule with dosing is start low and go slow. I talk about this in another video at more length, but basically, for starters, we're going to just do 5 milligrams of CBD, and 1 dropper is 25 milligrams. So we're just going to do a small portion of a dropper here, about 1/5 of a dropper, to make 5 milligrams. Add that into the cocoa. And since it's an oil, it's going to, I'm going to go ahead and use this spoon here. It's going to float on the top a little bit. That's natural. We're going to just stir that around and kind of distribute it as best we can. And now we're going to spoon in a little chocolate on the top. I'm sorry, I said chocolate, I meant cream. We're going to spoon in a little cream on the top. And now for the final touch, we have a little cinnamon. Just a tiny little sprinkle of cinnamon on the top of that cream. And then also, I like to add a little nutmeg. Not much, just a pinch. Just a pinch to give it a tiny little accent. And there you have it, CBD cocoa. Enjoy. Take care.